Hello everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to this new lecture in our program on American literature. My name is Fuzi Slisli and I will be your instructor today and throughout this semester. Today we're talking about a new subject in American literature. We move to the period of the Revolution, the American Revolution, and the independence of the United States. It's a very important period, and a lot of considerable amount of quality literature was produced during this period and remains part of the anthologies of American literature. And some of the America's greatest or most sacred documents were written in this period. Documents like, for example, the Declaration of Independence, written, by people like Thomas Jefferson, for example. Although it's a political document, but it remains until this day a text that's still considered part of American literature because of the beauty of the language and the style used and the literary quality of the text. But there is also other texts that belong to this period, and we notice a significant changes in the way people looked at writing and literature, the purposes that they saw writing having, and what they used writing for. So let's begin without further ado. The Age of Reason, or the Age of Revolution, in American history is usually the period between 1750 and 1800. So it's the second part of the 18th century. We'll try to look at the stylistic features of and the ideas of three main writers: Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, and Thomas Paine. I want to start by giving you a little bit some historical information. The Revolutionary War in America took place between 1775 and 1783. It was a war between the colonies, which wanted to organize themselves as a new nation state, and Britain, the colonizing power, who owned those American colonies at that point. The reason for this war, it was a build-up. I mean, the colonies and especially the farmers and growers and aristocrats of the colonies were unhappy with England because they were paying increasingly more and more taxes imposed by Britain. And in the 1760s, the British government passed tax laws to increase again the control over the colonies. And the people in these colonies resisted and refused. America's disobedience, refusal to pay these taxes, angered Britain, and that sparked the war in which America was extremely unprepared, because at this point America still doesn't exist as a government. There is no government, doesn't have an army, doesn't have any kind of defense system, doesn't have a marine or a fleet to defend its seas, nothing. So what they did, they formed the Continental Congress, which is what we call today the Congress. And this Continental Congress included delegates from all the colonies. The Congress appointed George Washington as Commander-in-Chief of the American Army. And this is the title that remains until today as the official title of the President of the United States. He is the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. military. Later, the British suffered a loss at Yorktown, which led to peace talks, and the war ended in 1783 with the Treaty of Paris and the declaration of a new state, the United States of America. The writers of the Rationalist and the Revolutionary period, writers like Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, and Thomas Paine, were key instigators of the American Revolution. They instigated the revolution. They urged people to revolt against the British. They urged people to support a war of independence and used literature as a way to urge people to instigate. Their highly persuasive rhetorical prose sparked and sustained the revolutionary spirit that swept the nation and ultimately helped win the war against Britain. These writers were inspired by the European Enlightenment, so the rationalists based their ideas and beliefs on reason and truth. Their ideas were rooted in the philosophies of Aristotle, John Locke, René Descartes, Baruch Spinoza, and Gottfried Leibniz. Rationalist writers valued logic and what they referred to as eternal truths. They dealt only with certainties, so we only deal in certainties and what could be proven with evidence or empirical study. Rationalists sought clarity in thought and were concerned with finding certainty in this world. As such, in order to find truth, they did not rely on religious faith. They did not rely on higher powers, whether it's God or whatever it is, because they believed that life here on earth is based on certainties. Or even human senses. They rejected even human senses because they valued reason above anything else. From Descartes, rationalists learned that one can doubt everything, including his or her own existence. Descartes is famous for his cogito, cogito ergo sum in Latin, which means I think, therefore I am. And what's significant about Descartes is that he decided he will not believe anything, he will question everything, including his own existence. Do I exist? And the answer came as a yes, but it was only after he insisted that proof of his existence is based on the fact that he thinks. So I think, therefore I am. From this most basic level, rationalists hope to build a true and complete model of the universe. As far as religion is concerned, remember they're coming in a society that had lived under Puritan culture and Puritan government for about 100 years or so. So many rationalists, writers, were religious deists and believed in deism. And basically deists are people who see God as the creator or prime mover of the universe. They don't have a problem with that. The world and the universe were created by God, and they work so perfectly, right? But they do not see God actively involved in human life. So this is what's called deism. A person believes that there is a God, that this universe was created by God, but God does not intervene or gets actively involved in people's everyday life. Thomas Jefferson, for example, is famous for having published his own Bible. Basically what he did, he took the old Bible and crossed out any supernatural or meta or any supernatural elements or stories. He crossed out everything that was supernatural or superstitious from the Bible and published a new Bible that's free of any supernaturalism or superstition. Rationalist writers composed virtually all of America's most sacred documents. The most sacred documents in America were composed by rationalists. We're talking here about the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States of America, the Bill of Rights, and the Federal Papers. As far as literature is concerned, American rationalism sees man, nature, and the universe as inherently good. So unlike the Puritans, who saw human beings as primarily sinners doomed to go to hell, the rationalists don't take that view. They believe that people are born as a blank sheet. So, and as a blank sheet, they can, become good or they can become bad depending on their actions. They value reason over emotion, intuition, tradition, and established doctrine. So reason is far more valuable for the rationalists. Reason is far more important and valuable than intuition, tradition, and established doctrine. They reject tyranny, fascism, faith, divine revelation, and superstition. They are concerned with the empirical world rather than life after death. And they emphasize self-knowledge and self-control. They are formal, disciplined, and use dense rhetorical prose. It's interesting because when you look even at Thomas Jefferson's letters, they are so well written and formal and disciplined, like he's writing a book. I mean, when some of us write a text message or a letter or something, and if it's, it depends if we are writing to a member of our family or a friend, we tend to just write a message quickly. We don't think about writing in formal, disciplined language. Well, these people wrote everything in a formal and disciplined language and with dense rhetorical prose. Their literature addresses a wide range of subjects, including philosophy, politics, science, and nature. Their ideas were thoroughly vetted, their words are chosen with extreme care, and their writing is crafted to be highly persuasive. Rationalist writers produced almost no literary fiction or poetry, right? Almost no plays or novels or poetry. Their most common forms of writing were letters, essays, newspaper articles, and speeches. Deism, as we have explained, was a common religious belief among the rationalists. Rationalists were responsible for initiating and sustaining the American Revolution. They were the ones who instigated it. يعني التحريض من ناحية التحريض حرضوا على حرب الاستقلال الأمريكية. They were responsible for initiating and sustaining the American Revolution. The writers were highly intellectual and highly educated statesmen. They were inspired by the ideas of empiricist philosophers like Aristotle and John Locke. And rationalists, basically, as far as their literature is concerned, they honed the art of persuasive writing by employing anecdotes, figures of speech, and vivid imagery. These techniques give their readers the opportunity to think through new ideas for themselves, thus acknowledging the power of reason in all men. Many works of this era use deductive reasoning to make a point, which is a form of logic. Evidence is presented using a strict rhetorical structure that, first of all, identifies a problem, then identifies its causes, and then proposes a logical solution to this problem. Although many works from the rationalist period are political in nature, like the Declaration of Independence, for example, other themes include scientific observations, proposals for new ways of doing things or organizing society, ideas for new forms of government, and inventions that might benefit mankind and add to the body of human knowledge. Their themes in their writing, they emphasize, there is an emphasis in their writing on self-knowledge and self-control, reason and scientific observation, the rule of law and order, man's ability to perfect himself and society, and freedom from restrictive laws. There is an emphasis on self-knowledge and self-control. This involves people doing what they knew to be right and just. During this time, people were making an increasing number of new discoveries and travels, adding to self-knowledge and increasing self-control. So self-control in writing had to do with what kind of words were used and how they were able to get that point across to the audience. The art of persuasion, I mean, a little bit about the characteristics of their writing. Their writing had the following characteristics. They perfected the art of persuasion. They write to convince and persuade. They used parallelism, logical reasoning, argumentation, imagery, and appeal to emotion and to logic. Let's break them down a little bit. They perfected the art of persuasion. This involves using various techniques to persuade someone who believes the same as you. They used examples and anecdotes, specific facts, details, and information about a topic. Patrick Henry was a great orator who urged resistance to England and received respect and agreement to his ideas. They also used imagery, a lot of imagery. They used descriptive and figurative language for the person reading. It involves the use of all five senses, so there are powerful descriptions when they write essays. Their descriptions are rich and powerful, and they try to use metaphors and figurative language that can get all the readers or the listeners' full five senses to be activated. Also, their writing, they use parallelism, which is the repetition of grammatical structure which is used in poetry and other writing to emphasize the link. They use logical reasoning, using logic to get a point across to an audience, basically. They used argumentation, which is persuasive style, including arguments for each side, for or against. They appeal to emotion and logic, using both emotional and logical standpoint for an argument. The types of literature that they wrote, basically they left political documents, newspaper articles, private letters, epistles, essays, and speeches. Not much in terms of plays and not much in terms of novels or stories. Their political documents, they are written records of things that have had a significant impact on our country. Examples: the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, or Common Sense, which is a pamphlet by Thomas Paine. They also wrote newspaper articles. It's a short, brief article, normally containing recent information. Benjamin Franklin, for example, wrote Poor Richard's Almanac with recent information every year. They also wrote private letters. These are letters written from one person to another. They're not intended for the public, and examples would include letters written from one public leader to another. They used epistles, which sometimes some people call public letters, in which a leader may write a letter to a large group of people, such as the entire nation, the army, or Continental Congress. They also wrote essays, and these outline facts in an informative layout, often expressing an idea or giving a synopsis. They wrote speeches, like, for example, Patrick Henry's famous speech, "Give me liberty or give me death," and he was known for giving the best speeches, asking for American support in going against Britain. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture. I hope it's been useful and entertaining, and I shall see you in the next lecture. My name is Fouzi Slisli, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.